So this is the first of 3 videos I'm posting this week. They're all going to be about different things. But I just wanted to give a heads up that there will be 3 videos. This one in particular is a tool review for the X2 X-Tool D1 Pro. Now, when I was speaking with the contact I had for X-Tool, was not aware of the fact that they had a 20-watt laser. I believe there's a couple other companies now that I've done a little bit more research that do offer a 20-watt laser. So when this came and I set it up, obviously I learned fairly quickly that it was. I also fairly quickly decided that I'm not going to be giving this one away. I do apologize for that. I feel a little bit like I went back on my word with these lasers, but unfortunately for you, but fortunately for myself, the business comes first before YouTube or anything like that. And because of the capacity of this laser, it just cuts down on the times for these projects almost in half across the board, even with some tests I've run on some other 10-watt lasers, which will really come in handy for when I do eventually start producing other work with these lasers. So I just couldn't it wouldn't be intelligent to give this one away because it is so much more efficient with cutting times. With that said, this will then put my total in the shop to 3 lasers, and like I said, I don't need 3. I like having I'm planning on having a solid runner, which will be this one, and then a backup in case something happens. So while I won't be giving away the X-Tool, I will be giving away one of my other lasers that I have in the shop that I kept, the Ortour or the longer ray. So technically this is going to eventually be a giveaway, just not this particular tool. X-Tool asked for 2 videos associated with this review. So the second video is where that giveaway will take place. So I'm giving away the same amount of lasers. I'm just swapping one in the shop with this one. I hope people aren't too upset about that. I do apologize, but this is a pretty cool tool. Other than that, because this isn't a giveaway, I won't get into all of the details with that. What I tried to do with this is compare and contrast some of the cut tests I had with the 5-watt laser, and then I am posting another laser giveaway, a completely new laser, on Sunday, and that is a 10-watt. So by Sunday I'll have a 5-watt, a 10-watt, and a 20-watt compare and contrast list of cut times for all of these tools, which I hope people said that was very helpful for the 5-watt, which is why I decided to do it again with these. And then this one, so the cut test will be kind of the beginning portion of the video, but I try and run through it a little bit quicker. And then there is a build project at the end of this video. And then the second video I do for X-Tool will be exclusively a build project. I'm going to try my hand at playing around with an ideal I have for the rotary, which also came with this tool. So like I said, 3 videos this week. This is just going to be a regular tool review. The second part of the vanity build will be uploaded on Saturday, and then a brand new laser giveaway will be Sunday. Next week, with the second part of this tool review, I'll have a giveaway for one of the lasers already in my shop. I hope all that makes sense. That's about it. So for this review, X-Tool gave me an air pump, and then the laser comes with a rotary as well, which is inside the other box, and it's that black box on the side with the X on it. And one of the other reasons I'm not giving this away is this box is massive. It's easily 2 to 3 times the size of any of the other laser boxes I've gotten, so it would cost a fortune to ship it. But the laser giveaway I'm doing on Sunday is the Atzer P10, and you could see just the differences in the module sizes. This one is a 10-watt in my hand, and the D1 is going to be a 20-watt. Now, one of the nice things about X-Tool is they do give you this package of materials to play around with. Some of the other lasers have done this. They've given me some plastic and some plywood. I always save that stuff for the person who wins the giveaway because I've already done tests on all this sort of stuff. But I do think that's a nice additive, because the first thing you're going to want to do is play around with stuff, and buying this stuff piecemeal off Amazon gets kind of expensive. In order to use the X tool in Lightburn, you have to download a driver, just giving people a heads up about that. It is in the instructions, but I don't always read the instructions, so it took me a little bit of time to figure this out. You download this driver, and then you press import instead of create manually, and it imports the information right into Lightburn, and then you're ready to go. You could see above it, I tried to create the X tool manually, and it wouldn't work. But once you have that driver in, you're good to go. And then, like all these other videos, I'm going to do an engraving test. The difference between this tool and the other ones I've tested are, at this point I'm fairly familiar with the settings that will engrave and cut, but this one's completely different. So you can see that what was happening was I was getting this double image. I'm not going to get into the science of why it's doing that, but someone online said to go into your settings. Apparently this is a problem now that some of these diode lasers are just getting more efficient and faster, and I'm turning off this bi-directional scanning. Once I did that, I had no problem with this double image, and then I could add this to my test sheet. Did a very quick pass of this because the cuts I do for all the testing take a while, so I wanted to kind of jumpstart into that. And you could see that is pretty much on par with the other ones. Obviously, I just have to adjust the settings to get it a little bit darker, but this sheet is just to make sure that the belts are tensioned right. It's cutting the image perfect and square. So then I went through and I did a couple more tests to get the engraving down, and you can see the numbers are pretty different than other ones I've done. So that's what I was trying out there. Now Xtool also gives you their own program to play around with, and that's what this is on the screen. I'm not going to be using this because I've already gotten used to Lightburn and I've already paid for it. But if I was getting just a regular laser, I found this hardware, the little bit I played around with it, to be pretty efficient, and I might have put off buying Lightburn and toyed around with this a little bit. I also like that they have a setting for cylindrical, because setting up the rotary could be a little bit of a pain. So it could be nice, and I'm going to test this out next week, to use this program just for setting up the rotary. I'm going to go through it pretty quick because I know people watch these videos to learn about the tool, even though I'm not using this program a lot. There's the engraving, and then you could press the button on the machine to frame everything, figure out where it's going to be, and then you could start engraving, and that's kind of just a very basic overview of their software. So just like the 5 watt, a lot of comments I got were people saying how helpful that review was. I'm not going to lie, this isn't the most interesting thing to do in the shop, but since I have all these lasers, I thought it would be useful to do a 5 watt, a 10 watt, and a 20 watt just to see the differences. So I'm going to go through this stuff much faster than I did in this 5 watt video. I tried some 16th inch veneer, then this is 1/8 inch plywood, and it was only 1 or 2 cuts into testing this out where I really started to realize how much faster this machine was going to be, because I had written down all the times from the other laser, and it was easily cutting everything in half, and some points cutting things down by 2/3 a time. And like I said, when you're cutting this stuff out, it could take an hour or 2 hours to do a whole sheet of ply. So if you can cut that in half, it's just a big time saving. Once again, here's 1/4 inch oak. It went through it really easily. And then the 5 watt laser got hung up on the 1/2 inch plywood, but this one went through that really smoothly. We'll put all the times and the settings in the description box, because like I said, they are quite different than any of the other lasers I've tested. And there's the 1/2 inch super clean, no burning or anything like that on the bottom. So after this, I decided to try 3/4, and the 3/4 I had a little bit of trouble with. I think I could have gotten through it if I played around with it a bunch, but to be perfectly honest, I have no plans to be cutting thick material like this, so I didn't want to spend a ton of time working on it. I thought I got through because you could see smoke coming through the honeycomb bed, but it only went through in a couple spots, which is an issue with organic material. And I cut it in half. You could see I got pretty far down, just not completely all the way to the bottom. So I had heard that this does cut through 3/4 inch material, so I thought I'd try a softer wood like pine, which I had laying around the shop, and you could see I could cut through pine. I think I wrote down the settings for this. I could put it in the description, but you could see both of these marks go right through. So real quick, this was kind of when I decided to keep this one, was when I first started doing these wood tests. If you watch the channel, you'll recognize these plugs from the video I posted last week of the 5-watt laser. So just going through, obviously, the size of plywood and how fast it took to cut it, you can tell that the quality of the cuts and the engravings is pretty similar between both lasers. I had problems with burning with the 5-watt laser and 1/2 inch, but other than that, they're pretty similar. The big difference and the big change for myself is obviously the times. It's not only in half, it cuts it down by almost 2/3 across the board. And I mean, towards the end, you're looking at a substantial amount of time cut off for these engravings. So for someone who wants to use this for a business, it's just going to make it so much more efficient for me to get parts out there. But for people that want a laser, and this is why I'm spending all of this time doing these reviews and especially these cut tests, you could see, you know, if you just want to make stuff for family and friends, the quality is not terrible for a 5-watt laser. If anything, if I mix these all up, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. And it won't really matter how long it takes you, and you could save a lot of money. But for someone like me, this is kind of a game changer, because some of these longer designs were taking 2 to 3 hours to cut out. So then moving along, I tried out the foam. Getting the settings for the thinner material was a little bit harder because Xtool has some preset settings, which was nice to pull numbers in from. They had a lot of good information on like wood and acrylic, but these kind of more obscure materials, they didn't. But like I said, I'm going to go through these cuts pretty quickly and put the numbers in the description for people that want them. But essentially, they cut everything and did everything the 5-watt laser could. Some of these materials, and it's like this on every laser, it doesn't always completely cut out through the back. So if this was something I was using for a customer or a product, I usually go a little overkill with the cutouts just to make sure that they're through. But you can see everything's nice and clean. And then the enamel coated aluminum, once again with the logo, and this was cutting so fast I switched from the B carving to the logo, and I even made it bigger in some circumstances. The bigger logo was cutting faster than the B sometimes. It was just crazy how quickly it was doing this. And then the cork, same thing with, I put the logo on there. The cork also with the 5-watt laser, I did not get it to cut all the way through. I don't know if it has something to do with the density of the material or the air in the material, I don't know, but you could see it engraves quite nicely on the cork, but when I tried to go through it, I couldn't go through it. Now this is like 3/8 inch thick cork. I'm fairly positive that the Xtool on their list says this will cut through thinner like sheets of cork. So I think this was just an issue with the thicker stuff. You can see I tried a couple different lines. I nudged the laser at one point, and after multiple passes, it still only goes about a quarter of the way down the cork. I don't have any plans to be cutting cork in the future, so that wasn't a huge deal. So then on all the transparent materials, I put a black backer behind it. If you don't do this, the laser will just go through the material. It'll have nothing to focus on and it won't cut. And if you watch the 5-watt laser video, I couldn't get this silk nylon to cut, but I could get it to cut with the 20-watt. The engraving on it was a little hard to narrow down, but it was able to cut. Same thing with the canvas. This one cut through pretty cleanly. Obviously the laser grabbed onto the canvas at the end there, but a nice engraving, and as well it was able to cut through there. Once I eventually keep one of these and set them up, everything will have to be stamped down a little bit nicer. You won't have these issues with stuff moving. And the Slate Coaster, I really enlarged the engraving and did that one as well. And this ever efficient scratch test proves that that's in the slate, and this was a really nice finished piece. I was pleasantly surprised with the quality as well as how quickly it was doing things. And then I tried out, this is cordboard essentially, but this is going to be similar for if you were cutting paper. This would be a cool way to not only enlarge your logo but make stencils. You could spray paint all kinds of stuff if you were able to make stencils. You can see that material pops out really quickly once it's done. Didn't remove the center portion of this one because the 5-watt laser was it made it a little fragile, so you'll see later in the video I keep most of that together. And then was plexi. The 5-watt was able to do plexi, but this one was obviously faster, so I made a larger engraving. And I have cold galvanized spray paint on the left hand side, which is another workaround for getting engravings on stuff like that are transparent and glass. Now I also tried practice cutting this, and it did in fact cut through. But I've had this problem with plexi on other power tools. It's so hot that after it cuts, it kind of melts the plexi back together. So if you wanted to cut plexi on this, I think you can. You just have to make the cuts and very quickly remove the piece and pop it out before that plastic could melt back together. But there is the engraving on plexi. And then I tried out leather. At this point, I was assuming this was going to be able to do everything the 5-watt laser was doing, just faster, and that was pretty much the consensus for all of these tests. So this is cutting through the leather. Once again, pretty quickly. Stuff. And then I also did glass. Now the difference between the cold galvanized spray paint and the black background is the black background's going to engrave on the underside of the piece. So in some circumstances you might have to mirror your image, whereas the cold galvanized will engrave on the top side. The laser is actually interacting with the spray paint to create the image, whereas the black is focusing the laser below the surface on the black surface, if that makes sense. Xtool's website actually recommends using this cold galvanized spray paint. I use a respirator with it just in case there's any sort of galvanized off gassing, but it works really well. This was a very clean engraving. The 5-watt engraved as well, but this one was a little bit crisper. You can see there's two different effects created by using both of those materials, but that is etched in there on that glass. And then to finish this up, once again, the ceramic, I did this one very quickly. I didn't really dial in the settings as well as the 5-watt, so the 5-watt actually etched a little bit better, but like I said, at this point I think it was pretty apparent that this was going to have the exact same capabilities of the 5-watt and just a little bit faster. So then the next day I did a thin cut test, which I've done before, and it didn't go through at all. This was part of when I started changing the numbers. You could see I did it with the long array, and the long array popped out 3 pieces, and I knew there was no way this 20-watt machine wasn't as powerful as the long array. So when I pulled up the Xtool, you could see the speed they want you to do is at 4 and the power's at 100. So a lot of these cutting applications will go through in one cut at a low speed. You could see my thin cut test only goes as low as 20. So I'm probably going to have to buy some new cut test tools for this new laser because the numbers are just very different than what I'm used to. So then I bought this file off of Etsy, which is something I've been doing recently because I don't have time to do these reviews and make original art. And Xtool had specifically asked, because this video coincides with one of their holiday sales, to do something festive. I admittedly am not really a holiday person, but I do enjoy giving gifts. So this was a great way to make something fun for my nieces and nephews, and also kind of fulfill what they wanted. So that program, I think, was the file for this was like $5. It was very easy to input into the program. I just changed the names from the ones that was on there, and this cut this file in about 14 minutes. I used the numbers for if this was a less powerful laser, and it would have taken almost a half an hour to cut all this stuff out. I'm going to lightly sand this. I wish I had thinner red oak. The red oak makes a very nice, clean, crisp cut. This, I believe, is birch, and it's not as clean. And then I could take all these pieces out and put this stuff together. This is where these lasers are really cool, is when you could start putting stuff together. This design's very clever. It has these little circles around the gears that you glue those circles in place on the piece, and then the gears could spin around the circles. So that's basically how that is going to work. And then I clear coated this background, and then I started super gluing this together. This is pretty intuitive, but if you're interested in these plans, and I'll put a link in the description, they show you exactly how to do all of this. So I kind of went about it in the way that I would do it, but there were instructions. And obviously in the description will be all the links to the Xtool stuff if you're interested in looking at the machines. They are definitely more expensive than any of the other ones I've tested, but I don't think the price point is extreme for what they are. But like I keep saying, it really depends on what you're planning on using it for. A hobbyist probably, and you know, people have a lot more money than I do, but something like this might not have been something I could have afforded, and I might have went with a less powerful but still good working quality tool. So to finish these up, I sanded down these gears because since they're all the same thickness, everything was grinding a little bit. So I took about 30 seconds of an inch off. I covered everything with paste wax so they'll move a little bit smoother. And on the description, the woman said, or the man, I can't remember, said they used wax, but I think paste wax will work a little bit better. I made sure the candy cane was lined up perfectly so it doesn't hit the sides. I could glue the top on, and the gears on this move really well and smoothly. My painting needs a little work on the candy cane, but I mean, stuff like this is just so cool to create quickly in the shop. And I was working on completely other projects while this was cutting all of this stuff out.